So today I want to make a video about this story. Now it's out of JWN Energy. I seen it posted, reposted from the National Post, but this was the first website that came up when I searched it, so I thought I'd post it up. But it's titled "Canada Lost 100 Billion in Energy Projects in the Last 2 Years," and it was originally posted in March of 2019, so it is kind of an old story, but I think it's still very relevant, and I should have made a video about it, and but here I am. And my guess is that I would bet money that we're still losing a lot of money on energy projects. I don't know anyone in the right mind who would argue against that. So the reason why this is a big issue is that the economy in Canada is struggling. Now, no one really denies that. I mean, even though the left will tell you it's good, but on the other hand, you'll point out, in Alberta, for example, you have Jason Kenney talking about how trying to get the economy. I know I don't think he's doing the greatest job in the world. He's a lot better than the left would have you think, but I think he's kind of in the middle. He could be doing better, but he's not that bad. And I think that's someone that's an opinion that someone in the right mind would have. But anyways, that's a different story in and of itself. But he talks about how the economy's got to get going. The economy's got to get going, and you have the people blaming him. Well, oh, it's because corporations and tax tax breaks for the rich, and the classic leftist talking points that they drone on again about over and over and over again until they're blue in the face. But on the other hand, they'll talk about when it's tied to Justin Trudeau, it's the economy is great, even though it really isn't. And the objective numbers aren't. Even the economy in the states it's good, but it's not as good as what the hardcore Trump fans would have you think. Unemployment's very low, namely for minorities, but a lot of the economy is propped up. The unemployment rate's a not the greatest number for measuring employment, because if you haven't looked for work within, I think it's a month, you're not counted. A lot of people are they're employed, but they're working two or three part-time jobs to make up for one. They're working, rather than having to work 40 hours a week, they're working 60, 70 to make what they should be making in 40. All that kind of stuff misleads people, and that's something that, especially in Canada, I mean, that's a bad thing as well. You have, I mean, the NDP solution in Alberta, and the Trudeau government's doing this to an extent as well, is let's just go into massive amounts of debt and we'll create some public sector jobs. The problem with that is that, well, from the leftist position, it's great, right? Because they get these public sector jobs. They're going to be given largely to people who agree with them. Those people are going to get money. They're going to donate to the parties, or at the very least, the unions are going to make money. So, I mean, it's great for the left, but the problem is that those jobs, they don't need to exist. Like, if those jobs were essential to run society and the economy and everything, they already would exist, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector. So the problem with those jobs is that they're completely meaningless and unnecessary jobs, and a conservative government comes in, they cut those jobs because, like I say, they're completely meaningless, and then the left gets all, their panties in a wad kind of thing. But back to this main story is that the energy projects are being killed largely because of a government that are climate alarmists. And like I say, those same NDP in Alberta, and like the federal conservative, or not conservatives, federal liberals, are climate alarmists. And rather than their solution to this is to basically make regulations that have lost Canada $100 billion. And it boggles my mind how you tell people this kind of stuff. Like, do you realize how much richer we would be if that money was invested in Canada? How many more jobs would be created? Like, it boggles my mind. The one of the main reasons the left will argue with this, and they'll never admit it, but that money would be largely private sector work, which they disdain, because the more private sector work that there is, the more people realize, well, hey, I don't need the government to get by. I'm doing just fine without the government. the reason, and vice versa. The reason why the left comes in the NDP, and like they always create these massive amounts of public sector jobs, is that those people are dependent on the government for their survival, and which case makes people more likely to support big government, which is what the left wants. So it's very simple to understand. I can't stand when people. I mean, yes, there's a little more to it than that. That's not the only thing, but I really can't stand when people needlessly complicate these things that can be explained fairly easily. But the Canadian economy is suffering quite badly, and yet we have a government who's supporting this kind of stuff. When if that 100 billion had been invested in Canada, the Canadian economy, namely in Alberta and the West, but I mean all of Canada, would be doing just fine. Like we might not be quite as good as the States, but that's partially because they're the States and they have the name value of being the States, but we'd be doing just fine. And it like I say, it boggles my mind how people can argue against this. Like, even if you think that climate change is this big issue, everything that's been done by the federal Liberals, the provincial NDP in BC and all these kind of things, nothing they have done has definitively worked to reduce or to solve the problem they're trying to solve. So, like I said, the official definition of insanity, I don't think, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, but everyone recognizes it as that. And that's what we're doing in Canada, is that we're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And the government does this because they benefit from it. I mean, Justin Trudeau is, in Costa Rica right now. He goes on like one holiday a month, I think it is, taxpayer funded. These, politicians are making 150, 200, $250,000 a year salaries with amazingly good pensions, and all they have to do is just keep doing the same thing over and over again. That's the fundamental problem with how government is set up now, is that it's not set up in a way that for people to solve problems, because the problem is that if the government were to solve true actual issues in society, they wouldn't reap the rewards of it. It would be future governments, which is why they don't do it. They tend to just do things to, especially the left, to virtue signal and to enrich and make themselves famous. And that's kind of the cycle we're at. So the take home point here would be is that the Liberals and provincial NDP and provincial Liberals, the Green Party, they're all going to keep doing more of the same. Canada's economy is going to continue to suffer. The other big problem too is that the Conservative Party, at least at this point, they do have a new leader coming in, but my guess is they'll be someone similar to Scheer, who's not really a conservative. They're about as watered down as a conservative as can possibly get. So that's kind of what's going to happen in Canada. And unless we can get a true principled conservative government elected that can kill the carbon tax, that can kill this climate alarmism that's being shoved down our throats, and to reduce regulations, cut taxes for everyone, not just the poor, because cutting taxes on everyone helps. It helps the poor because it's more money, and it helps the middle class because it's more money in their pocket. And cutting taxes on the rich helps everyone, because what the rich does to get rich usually is through investing their money, using compound interest to make money. And when they invest money, well, that helps everyone, because that means people can open businesses. That means that small, medium businesses that people work at grow because money's invested in there. So that's kind of what needs to happen in Canada for this kind of stuff to turn around, is that, like I say, we got to get rid of the carbon tax. We got to quit this climate alarmism BS that's being shoved down our throats. We got to reduce regulations, we got to cut taxes, and we have to, show the world that, hey, we're open for business again. So, I mean, yeah, like, Canada is, I mean, if we keep going down this path, we're in for some really rough times. We're already in rough times. Like I say, the problem with a lot of this kind of stuff is that the people who suffer from these kind of bad policies tend to support the policies that are making them suffer. And sometimes they don't recognize it. Sometimes they're just not smart enough to put two and two together. So that's kind of why I make these videos, is that I want people to understand why these kind of things are happening and what's causing this kind of stuff. Now, I'm not an expert, but compared to the average person, I am an expert. So I'll leave it there. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.